So first, I just wanted to share a little bit about the College Foundation of North Carolina. If you're not familiar with CFNC, we are a state-based nonprofit organization, and we're really a collaboration of many different organizations focused on education in the state of North Carolina. So you'll see on this wheel, we have all the colleges, public, private, 2-year, 4-year, represented in our partnership, as well as the Department of Public Instruction and the State Education Assistance Authority that's responsible for state grant money, right? Some of that free money we like to talk about. And we have a flagship website, CFNC.org. If you have not been on there, there's tons of resources to help you with every piece of the college process, planning, applying, paying, for all of those things. So definitely check that out. And we also have a telephone advice line that you can always call and talk to a live person about the process. And like me, we have several field representatives on the call today. We have 9 throughout the state that are just wonderful resources to help you with your going to college needs. And so here's the reps that are joining us on the call today. My name is Devin McCarthy James. I am the 828 West Regional Representative out here in beautiful Asheville. We also have Tamika Ruffin, who is out of the Charlotte area, Tequila Hall, who is in the Greensboro area, and then April Query, our Regional and Community Services Manager. So we've got several folks manning the chat, helping to present some information. So hopefully we've got y'all covered today. So this is just the structure of what we're doing today. So first, we're going to give you some tips on where to start with paying for graduate school. We're going to talk about some things that you can specifically find in the state of North Carolina that we want to make sure you're aware of, if they fit for your circumstance, definitely. Then we're going to have a panel discussion. You may notice we've got some experts here from various colleges. We've got folks from the 529 plan. We have somebody who's had experience using the GI Bill. So hopefully we can have a rich discussion about the various options and opportunities you can explore for paying for graduate school. And then hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions you have along the way. And then if there's something towards the end that we really need to wrap up and answer, we'll do that as well. And so now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Tamika Ruffin, to kind of share some opportunities with y'all to get started.
Thanks, Devin, and officially good afternoon, everybody, since we are now past 12 o'clock time. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to talk, of course, about kind of where you start with graduate school. One of the things that we wanted to do as we're talking about this was also kind of share if we had any advice to give to you about your journey. I did go to graduate school also, and I did go to it without having to take out loans. And so one of the things that I'll mention to you is that if you are at a place where you are still trying to figure out the funding part of it, it's okay to pause a little bit, right? And do your research and kind of find out more. The panel is going to talk to you a lot more about research and why that's so important. But I did get kind of talk to mentors and get an understanding that when you work on a college campus, sometimes they can pay for your college expenses. So for me, as soon as I graduated, I started researching different colleges, their human resources pages, higher ed jobs. That website I used a lot to figure out what colleges were looking for people to work on their college campus, the schools I was interested in. And so I did attend a school where I was actually working full time. So they paid for my classes as a full-time employee there. But also, I also decided to become a residence hall director. So if you are kind of younger, right, and you're just coming out of undergraduate school and you're trying to figure out where am I going to live, where am I going to do, one of the things that I did also research was to figure out how I could live and eat for free while I'm in grad school, right? And so I became a residence hall director at the college. So they paid for my housing and they paid for my meal plans, and I had health insurance, right? So I didn't really have any of those things to worry about. So there are different ways that you can do your journey. I'm just sharing my experience with you so that you can know that there are different ways to make this graduate school opportunity work. So where do you start? We always like to tell students to be sure that you, of course, fill out the FAFSA. If you have gone through undergraduate school, they drill this word into your head about the FAFSA, but it still carries on to graduate school. We think this is like the foundation, right? So when you're looking at where do I begin with finding money for college, we encourage you to fill out the FAFSA. So if it's been a little while that you fill out the FAFSA, of course, you know that you're doing it online. They do have an app now. If you missed that, they do have an app for the FAFSA application. So you could either go to studentaid.gov or you could download the app, which is called My Student Aid. But we highly recommend that this be your foundation, right? For whatever school you're thinking about doing, you want to see what can the college offer you in general. And our panelists will talk about that, but this is the start. Like this is kind of the foundation for trying to help you find money for college. Of course, with most websites, you'll need a username and password, so you'll go through all of that, but I just wanted you to be sure that this is kind of your foundation of where you start with finding money for graduate school. Now, with most graduate programs at most colleges, a lot of times graduate students are not eligible for grant programs. So you may not be eligible for federal grants. You may not be eligible for even some of the state grant programs. So a lot of times through the FAFSA process, as an option, a lot of them will offer you loan options. And so we just wanted to mention to you typically what the maximum amount is that graduate students are offered per year. So as you're thinking about like what school do you want to go to, whether or not you want to go out of state, whether or not you want to do whatever it is, understanding what money is going to be available to you as an option. You have to keep in mind that they do have an aggregate loan limit. So if you do have a degree already and you took out loans, let's say for that prior degree, there is a limit as far as how much they will allow you to borrow over your educational kind of experience. I know some of you are praying right now on your knees that your loans are going to be forgiven from the past. So all of that will not be a part of that. So I'm not going to stop your prayers on that, but just know that there are limits as far as how much a student can borrow over their lifetime when it comes to your undergraduate degree and your graduate degree. So that's important to keep in mind as you're trying to decide on what school and where you're going. Now, most of the schools are going to give you that federal loan option, and that's typically going to be the amount you can borrow per year. But they're also going to give you the option of private lenders. And sometimes when students go to graduate school, they do decide to choose a private lender in opposed to maybe the loans they were offered through the FAFSA process. So we just want you to kind of be clear that not all of those lenders are the same. So when you are looking at a private source to borrow money for college, we always encourage you to pay attention to who those people are. You want to make sure that you understand the interest rates. One of the things that I always tell students is to be sure that you pause a little bit, because now you're a little bit older. If you're going to graduate school, you should no longer just be signing loan paperwork. You should really be looking at the loans that you're going to borrow, paying attention to what the interest rates are. I always tell students too, if I see an interest rate that just says variable, or if it just has a range from, let's say, from 2% to 8%, I'm going to be a little bit leery that they're not telling me straight out, what is my interest rate? And so one of the things I do try to encourage students to do is to look for loans that have a fixed interest rate so that you know going in what that rate is, and if it's not going to change and all of that. And then you also want to pay attention to things like, of course, how long they give you to repay it and all of that. So just wanted to mention that as you start looking at outside resources, that you pay attention to all of your options. North Carolina does have an outside loan source that they use. They do have fixed rates. And students who are not necessarily from North Carolina, but if you have a North Carolina connection, you are eligible to apply for that loan. And so just wanted you to see the website is ncassist.org. So if you are looking at options for loans, this could be a really good option because it is very straightforward as far as what your interest rates are and repayment and all of that. And then just to be sure that you are clear about what your state offers. So obviously you are part of this webinar today because either you're attending a North Carolina college or you have some type of connection here to North Carolina. So what else does North Carolina offer specifically for graduate students? And so in our state, we do have a program called the Forgivable Education Loan for Service. What this program is for certain majors and programs, typically around the areas of health sciences and education. But students who are going into any of those areas, you have an opportunity to receive money through the state. Your obligation is that after you have received that money for your education, you have to work in the state of North Carolina for every year that you receive that money for college. If you do that, you do not have to repay the money that you receive through this particular program. So in order to see all of the eligible programs and to see what schools specifically qualify for you to be able to use these particular funds and to apply for the program, you do want to go to cfnc.org/FELS. That's the FAILS program is what we call this particular program. Just so you can see all of the eligible programs. Typically the amount students can get can range anywhere between $10,000 to up to $14,000 per year to help pay for school, which is really great. These are currently the programs, just to give you a snapshot of the majors, the kind of master's and doctoral programs that you could possibly get funding for. Again, you can find all of this on cfnc.org/fails, which is again in the name of the program. And so typically applications are open up usually around the end of the year, December, early January. So they are closed for students who are planning to start next fall, but it will open up again the end of this year, early next year. So be sure that you're looking out for that if you are thinking about any of these programs or areas. So definitely check out the FAILS program. And I will turn it back over to Devin and we'll get to meet some of our panelists.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tamika. That was a really great rundown of some opportunities that people should definitely be looking into. So let's go ahead and just introduce our panelists. If we can skip to that next slide. So we've got a host of folks, and I'm going to let them do some of the real heavy introducing of themselves, but I just want you to know that we've got quite a spread of experiences, both personally and professionally, on this panel. We've got some folks from some state schools like App State, HBCU state schools like NCA&T, and North Carolina Central University. We've got private school institutions like Duke. We've even got someone who used the GI Bill to go back to school. So she's graciously agreed to join us to kind of share her experience. And then, of course, we've got one of our own favorite folks, Ms. Anastasia, with the NC 529 plan to kind of share how that works. So we've got a bunch of folks. And so I'm going to just kind of pick by my screen who gets to introduce next. I'm going to start, though. So like I said, my name is Devin McCarthy James, and I'm a CFNC representative. And I've gone to graduate school a couple of times, and they were very different experiences. Basically because I wised up the second time. The first time I went to school, I went to an out-of-state university. I was very excited to go. And so I paid the out-of-state tuition rates. And I did not really look for scholarships. I was offered loans, and I said, that looks great. Let's just sign off those loans. Exactly what we're telling you not to do. So I've learned the hard way. And I took out a lot of loans. Not only that, but I didn't budget well. And so I had to take additional loans, private loans, which can get very expensive to cover all of my living expenses. So I learned my lesson. And when I went back to school again, I was looking at another out-of-state school from where I was living. I was actually moving to North Carolina, planned on living here. Obviously, it's stuck. I'm still here. But this time I thought ahead and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to establish residency in that state first. And so I moved to North Carolina. I established residency to get that in-state tuition rate. So that was my first informal scholarship that I earned, right? And then I made sure to talk to my advisors, to talk to the financial aid office, to talk to everybody that I could talk to about what opportunities were there for me. And I ended up earning a scholarship that I wasn't quite qualified for, but qualified enough, and they didn't have other applicants. So it was supposed to be technically for a doctoral program, but I was in a master's program and I was a really good candidate. So they said, that's okay, we will modify the requirements so that you can do a research project and still receive those funds. And that was a $10,000 scholarship. So that was very, very exciting and helped a lot. The other thing I did was I chose the shortest program possible. I went through a 14-month accelerated program because I was intending to be full-time. And that way I spent less time back in school and not earning funding. So that's my, short/long story of my journey towards getting my graduate degree. And first on my screen is Victoria Karlberg out of App State. So I'm going to have her introduce herself and talk about how she relates to this paying for graduate school, both professionally and personally.
Thank you, Devin. So hi, everybody. Welcome. Victoria Karlberg. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment here at Appalachian State for our graduate studies. So I like Devin and like the example of what not to do when it comes to paying for graduate school. And I did a lot of the same things she did. I just didn't do them well. So what I do now and what I did then was, even for my undergrad, I encouraged people to get their residency when you're moving states, when you're thinking about paying for school. And so what I did when I came to North Carolina as an undergrad was the first thing I did was I got my residency because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to afford out-of-state tuition. Fast forward, I did my graduate degree out of state, but I did not look at any kind of funding. It was an online program. It was at a private university. And I was like, I just want to do this and get it done. And many, many, many thousands of dollars later, I am still paying back that loan with no end in sight. I am praying that I am one of those fortunate ones that get those forgiven. But the things that I can say is that now I'm doing my doctoral degree and I am utilizing the funds available through my institution because they do allow free classes for full-time employees. And so we encourage all of our employees to go back to school if they're considering a second degree or a terminal degree, to do that and to utilize the funds that we have available. And this is actually across all of our UNC partner schools that you can do this. So if you get a job at another UNC institution, then you can still have access to that. And then lastly, to seek, I encourage people to do what I did not do, and that is to seek scholarships, because I did just do loans. So what I spend my time now is just trying to advise our incoming students with the best ways to pay for school without having to repay those many loans later. But I'm super glad to be here and to help you all in any way possible.
Awesome, thank you. So getting a job at a university might be a good idea if you're looking to go back to grad school. Awesome. Let's hear from Dr. Alan Kendrick at Duke. Will you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey?
Well, thank you, Ms. McCarthy James. I'm Alan Kendrick, Assistant Dean for Graduate Student Development at Duke University. And I want to first thank you and Ms. Ruffin for the invitation to participate with all of my colleagues, all of the fine panelists who have given such great information. I will let you know that I, like you, made some errors in the process of funding graduate education. My master's degree, I earned a master's degree from the University of Virginia, and I also earned a doctor of philosophy degree from the University of Virginia. Not so important, but to say that en route to the PhD, I accrued some loans. And there are some things to consider that my colleagues have already talked to you about. Are you working for a company, a corporation, or an institution that will provide funding for your schooling while you're working for them? I did not investigate that at all. There was an opportunity where I could have paid some minimal interest while my loans were in deferment. Again, people talk now about having a side hustle or making additional income. And I think that is important to think about in the event that you do have to make that investment in yourself to get your graduate degree. One of the things that I've monitored in the chat was we have there's some folks that are saying that PhD funding is slim. And I want to make sure that there is an understanding of potentially where you're applying to school. Are you applying at institutions like North Carolina Central, like Appalachian State, like Duke, like NCA&T, that are nonprofit institutions? Typically at these institutions, the doctor of philosophy degree, again, as opposed to as Ms. Ruffin has shown us, the doctor of optometry, the doctor of dental surgery or dental medicine, those kinds of, there's very separate. But for the doctor of philosophy degree, that's where I'm focusing because that's where my expertise is that my understanding is that the way that the revenue is generated from the undergraduate and potentially other master's degrees, that you should not be paying for a doctor of philosophy degree per se. You should ask the institution essentially for the doctor of philosophy degree, what is the fellowship and scholarship support? How long is that support? Because again, the doctor of philosophy degree typically is going to take you, I had friends to do it in 3 years. I was not so lucky. It's going to typically take 5 to 7 years to complete a doctor of philosophy degree. So there's a commitment there. And you can imagine paying tuition for 5 years at an institution like Duke would, and let me just be clear, bankrupt the average person. So that is not the situation that our colleagues at CFNC and my panelists today want you to be in. And we want you to begin to ask the questions and to say, even for the for-profit institutions that may be requiring payment, let's look at that and look and ask questions about where are students placed, what are the job prospects, so on and so forth. I also, in closing my introductory remarks, want to just advise you to look for funding in the strangest places. I want you to leave no stone unturned. For example, does your bank have a scholarship, a competitive scholarship for persons going back to school for whether it's for a master's degree or whatever? I know that the Duke, sitting on the board of the Duke Credit Union, there is this type of funding. So, I say, Duke Credit Union has it. Maybe somewhere you might belong to another credit union that may have such a competitive application for folks seeking education. I'm just thinking things that came to mind, the Lions Club, other social organizations that may provide funding to men and women who are furthering their education. So that is going to, I think, be something that I can add to say, leave no stone unturned. $200 is $200. So it may not be the amount that you need, but again, everything adds up. So I will stop there and thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kendrick. That was great advice. Yes, absolutely. Look everywhere and anywhere for funding. Don't be discouraged by small dollar amounts because you've got fewer applicants for those small dollar amount scholarships. I love that. And then finally, something that you said that really stuck out to me was nonprofit institutions, right? They tend to be more affordable and have more opportunities to bring down those costs in our experience. And one thing that's really nice about the CFNC.org site is that's the only kinds of colleges you will find on that CFNC site, is all 110 of those kinds of colleges on that site. So definitely thank you for mentioning that. That's a great point. Next, we're going to go over to Miss Ronette Hamilton at NCA&T.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like the others before me, I attempted to get my master's degree, and I had the same mentality. I just wanted to get this over with. So I did take the route of taking out those loans, and yes, every month writing that check. However, I did still have the opportunity I was working at an institution that did pay for some of my courses. So even though I did take out the loans, I did try to balance it out a little bit with also having some of my courses paid for. So I did a type of a combination. But as I look at my pursuing my PhD, I am looking at making sure that PhD is no expenses to me. But yes, take every opportunity to look for any scholarships that you can use in order to obtain your next degree opportunity. Also here at A&T, we offer an opportunity to review your applications for scholarships. So if you're applying for fellowships, we do have someone on campus who can assist you with that process. So also think about that, because a lot of times it can be kind of intimidating in completing all of those applications and making sure you're including what needs to be there in order to have your application selected as a scholarship recipient. So also keep that in mind, that you can have someone, review what you have to make sure you're including everything that needs to be included.
Wonderful. That's great. I'm writing down everything y'all are saying. That's great. Don't worry. I'm writing it down furiously. I love that you have scholarship application review help. That is probably a lot of peace of mind for folks going through the process, that they have that extra set of eyes and help. I love that. So next, let's hear from North Carolina Central University. We have a couple of folks with us today, Ms. Sharon Gaskin and Rashawn Albritton. So Sharon, if you want to introduce yourself, and then Rashawn, you can hop on and introduce yourself as well.
Thank you so much, Devin. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharon Gaskin. I am the Associate Dean of Admissions and Financial Assistance at the law school. I am a licensed attorney, and after I graduated from undergrad, I didn't go straight to law school. I worked for 7 years, saved some money to try to offset some costs, and I searched for scholarships. So I guess I'm the weird one on this panel today, but after having worked for a couple of years, I just appreciated those dollars all the more. And so I think some of you on the call are older, so it sounds like to me, based on some of the questions in the chat, that you feel like me. Like I really want to make the most of this opportunity. Just to make you guys aware, first-year law students per ABA guidelines are encouraged not to work at all. Second and third year, you may seek out work study opportunities. And in our law school, and many law schools, there are employment opportunities in the library, or as a research assistant, or as an ambassador in different departments. So in that second and third year, absolutely you could work. In that first year, law school is different, very different from undergrad, and you really need to allow yourself the time to learn this new way of thinking and doing analysis and responding in class, preparing for exams, writing exams. So for that reason, again, the ABA says no, first year shouldn't work. So definitely you want to make sure that you've maximized savings as much as you can. Certainly to family and friends who are supportive of your dream, call on them. In the chat, there was someone at the start of the program who indicated that his daughter would be enrolling in law school. I included the links to 2 different scholarship databases that are dedicated to law students. I encourage you to take a look at those. The one from Access Lex, and Lex is Latin for law, but Access Lex, that database is searchable. So you can search by, so let's say that you moved here from Missouri, and now you're a North Carolina resident, but you may be thinking of going back or wherever. You can search by geographic region. You can search by ethnicity. You can search by due date. Some of those scholarships still have upcoming due dates. And then the Law School Admission Council's page with the scholarship listing has just scholarships listed, and it does have the due dates. And there are lots of scholarships that target minority students, women who are applying to law school. So be sure to use those resources. Contact your local bar associations. Many of them offer scholarships. Now they will contact us as well, but you can go to their websites. So if you live in Greensboro, I would search for the Greensboro Bar Association. They do offer a scholarship. North Carolina Central is in Durham. The Durham Bar offers a scholarship. And if you're based in Raleigh, the Wake County Bar Association offers scholarships. So definitely search for your local bar associations to see what kind of scholarships they provide. And then if you are a veteran, and I'll leave that to my vet on the panel, but we have quite a few law students who are currently enrolled who are veterans or the children or spouses of veterans, and they're able to use some of those benefits. So explore all of the financial opportunities that may be available to you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ms. Albritton. I work as the Associate Director of Financial Aid here at North Carolina Central University. I'm glad to be here with you. Hopefully share something that maybe you didn't know about previously. I've heard a lot of my colleagues talk about the free tuition working at a state agency or an educational facility, and that's exactly what I did with my graduate degree program. I've always been very cost conscious, which is why I work in financial aid. So keeping that in mind, if you don't, have that option, also think about books. For example, I only bought one book when I was in my graduate school program because they were all at the library. And I know a lot of people don't think of libraries anymore because they're kind of outdated and everything is electronic, but those are still resources. So keep that in mind. Additionally, if you don't have that opportunity, or maybe you're not employed at one of those agencies, think about loan forgiveness after you graduated. So the public service loan forgiveness is something I like to mention. You'll be surprised the definition of what is considered public service. It could be a nonprofit agency, a government agency, state agencies. If it's deemed nonprofit or public service, it may qualify for the public service loan forgiveness. So it's a sort of a lengthy process. It's 10 years of paying your loan, but at the end of that 10 years, if your loan isn't paid for, then it can be forgiven, the remainder. So I recommend everyone, all of my colleagues at the university and just other organizations to participate in that program. It's a federal program. You go to studentaid.gov and sign up for it. So keep that in mind. I'm also a fan of service loans. I used to work with the FAILS program administering it. So that's our state North Carolina serviceable loan, but also our Teach Grant. That's another serviceable loan. It's a federal loan if you're going into teaching. We do participate that here. A lot of other schools also participate. So we recommend that as well. And I haven't heard a lot of people talk about the departments as a resource. We recommend all of our graduate students to check with their departments. So on our campus, we have our general scholarships that all the campus undergrads and graduates can take advantage of that application. But in addition to that, each department may have additional funding. And those are the students that they refer to our office. So we process the scholarships and the stipends that they give them, but we don't select the recipients. The department will refer you to our office, and then we just handle the processing. So keep that in mind. Also graduate assistantships, again, through the departments or through our graduate office. You may have the option to have your tuition waived in addition to getting a stipend. And that's in exchange for working, if you're able to do that in a campus office. So there are a lot of different resources. Like I said, I'm pretty creative when it comes to reducing costs for things. So hopefully some of that is helpful.
I love all of that. Thank you. You guys gave us some really great tips, some things to think about, right? When we're getting more specific in our education and our degrees, it sounds like a lot of the funding does come through departments. A lot of the funding does come through professional organizations, perhaps like with scholarships and things like that. So if you aren't already connected with those professional organizations of the profession you're looking to get the master's for, find out what's in your area, what's statewide, what's national. A lot of those things, I feel like those scholarships aren't necessarily well publicized either. So you wouldn't necessarily run into them unless you're really looking. going and doing that search. The other thing that Rashawn said was about the public service loan forgiveness. You can actually go on to studentaid.gov and find out what kinds of agencies and organizations might qualify. As she said, it would surprise you some of the organizations that are included in this definition of public service. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that information. Now we're going to skip over into our resident military spouse, Miss Hannah Bransass. I'm sorry, did I say that correctly? Is it Bransassy? Bransass?
Bransassy.
Okay, Bransassy. And so if you could tell us a little bit about your experience, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here. My experience is definitely a little bit different from everyone else's, just dealing with the GI Bill. Marry a soldier, that's my tip. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I finished my undergraduate degree in 2017, made a lot of mistakes financially paying for that. And the way the GI Bill works for spouses is that you're not eligible to receive it from your spouse that's in the military until they've been in for 6 years and agree to another enlistment. So at the time, you know, again, just wanted to get it done like other people, get that degree on the books, and decided to just take loans. I did not take the time to look for scholarships, which I should have. But you know, that was a learning experience for me. So after I finished undergrad, I was very hesitant to move forward into graduate school. You know, just you kind of feel like you're done with that first big step of getting your undergraduate degree. It's kind of, you know, intimidating. And again, not having made the best choices financially paying for undergrad, I was certainly a little stressed out about that. But because of the GI Bill being an option for me as a military spouse, I kind of just took a chance and decided to apply to a school I never thought I would get into, honestly, and had no means of paying for because it was a private school. But I took a chance anyway because of the GI Bill. Even though it's a private school, they'll still cover, you know, a good amount of that. So it ended up covering 40% of that cost for me. And then scholarships also became a huge part of that journey for me as well. Applying to a scholarship, and that covered another 30%. So essentially I got 70% of it between the GI Bill and scholarship that I received. And definitely not a cheap school. I by no means come from a wealthy background, but again, because of all of that, I was able to take that chance. And $100,000 for a graduate degree sounds like a lot of money, but it was the school that I really wanted to go to because they had a military social work track. So that's what my degree is in, military social work. And yeah, I took that chance. And if I had been doing that today, as opposed to 2018, there's also the Yellow Ribbon program. So the Yellow Ribbon program is essentially any school that gets federal funding is eligible for participating in the Yellow Ribbon program, where they have to negotiate the uncovered cost with the government. So they will pay that difference as well. That law was not in effect when I was going through this process, but it is now as of this year. So any school that you go to that, you know, obviously accepts the GI Bill has to participate in the Yellow Ribbon program. So that's especially important at private schools because it will cover all of the rest of that cost. More ideally, I would have rather been the one who was active duty because 100% of it gets paid for. They'll pay for your housing, you know, things like that. Particularly for the Army, it's only 3 years of your time, and then you get a free degree and pay for your housing. But it definitely, you know, was eye-opening for me, like I said, in undergrad, taking on those loans and just kind of racking that up, not taking the time to look for scholarships. And once I kind of processed through that and decided to go back to grad school, take a different approach, and the GI Bill is amazing, but the opportunity to get a scholarship covered, you know, a $30,000 cost. And I never would have gone to that school without all of those things. So I think sometimes people can feel kind of limited on their choices of which school to go to because of the cost of it. But there are definitely options out there, you know, that are not going to let you, like everyone else has said, not going to let you go into significant amounts of debt, you know, that none of us want to be in. Also hoping for, you know, loan forgiveness for the undergrad mistakes, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, everything as well for me as far as in-state tuition was not an issue. You don't have to be using the GI Bill for that. As a military person, active duty, or a spouse, you get in-state tuition automatically at any school. So that was a huge benefit to me, regardless of what school you choose. That's a fact, no matter where you go. Yeah, I think my main overhaul of the whole process is just take a chance on yourself. You know, you never know what that scholarship, even if you feel maybe not the most confident in applying for it. I think, like Devin said, you know, it was for a different program, but you never know that they might not have enough applicants. You might stand out to them for some reason and they end up, you know, approving you for that scholarship. And yeah, it definitely changed my life, even though it was a last minute decision, and here I am.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here to share your experience. I think a lot of folks know of the GI Bill, but aren't necessarily aware that it can fund spouses and dependents, not just the person who has served. And in North Carolina, we have some military scholarships on top of that for dependents of combat veterans and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities out there for veterans and their families. So we definitely want to make sure to highlight that. So thank you so much for being on today.
Sorry, there was a question in the chat to me that I meant to answer, but someone whose son started basic training, so good for them joining the military. Yes, absolutely. They can transfer their GI Bill to future spouses or kids. A lot of people in the military save that for that reason, because as long as they're active duty, they can still go to school for free. So even though I used the GI Bill of my husband's, he can still use it while he's active duty through tuition assistance through the military and still get his degree for free. So it didn't take away anything from him. But you can also, as the active duty person, they're able to designate a percentage of the GI Bill to go to different people. So if you have 2 kids, you can say, you know, 50% goes to each one, and, you know, things like that. You can always change that designation in the future. But yeah, you definitely, a lot of people in the military will save it for their, you know, spouses and kids in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all that insight. And last but never least, of course, Ms. Gabby Anastasi with the 529 plan. You want to tell us a little bit about how 529 might relate to grad school funding?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that I got to be the last one, because hearing all of your journeys has been very enriching for me. And sometimes it's not easy to talk about money, and in particular debt. And so I really appreciate how candid everyone has been about what student loans feel like and what they look like. I'm coming from the other side of the equation. I'm the Savings Services Supervisor here at the North Carolina 529 plan. And when people talk about college savings programs and 529 plans, it usually means that somewhere along the way, there was money from a family member or parents, or they've had a windfall of some kind that allowed them to save in advance in preparation for college expenses. But more often than not, that's not the case. The majority of us have to do all of the things that you all have stated that you've been doing. You took out loans, you found scholarships, and you worked your way through it as you attended. I just wanted to bring up the 529 plan and represent the plan on the panel here, because there may be some ways that you can use 529 plan money in your journey towards higher education. One thing that I wanted to point out is that it came up in the question in the chat today, is that 529 plans have most 529 plan accounts have transferability. So while you may not have had an opportunity to save to go to grad school or seek higher education, you may have a savings account, or someone else who is a relative may have a savings account, which is transferable to you for this purpose. So that's one of the main things I wanted to share with you about 529 plans. They're highly transferable, and those transfers usually do not involve any hefty fees or any tax consequences. So, for example, if you have a beneficiary for whom you've been saving and you decided, you know what, I'm going to need this money before my child is going to need it, you could transfer a portion of what you've been saving for your child to yourself so that you can utilize those 529 plan dollars for your own education. That's just an example of something that, you know, using the 529 plan and using the transferability option to use the money. Because then once you obtain your higher education, then you'll have an opportunity to perhaps replenish the account for your beneficiary, if that's the option, if that's the route you want to go, if you're comfortable with that. Another thing that I wanted to point out about the 529 plan is that it can be used anywhere nationwide. It doesn't matter where you attend school. So you could do it online if you're doing an online option, if you're doing it full-time, part-time. That makes no difference to the 529 plan. All of those withdrawals that would come from a 529 account, no matter where you're attending school or the format, whether it's part-time or full-time, 529 plan dollars are applicable in all of those instances. So that gives you a really broad and wide usage. They've enhanced in recent years all of the ways that you can use 529 plan dollars also, because previously, if you had a 529, there was a pretty strict list of ways that you could use that money: tuition, room and board, books, fees. So it was a very slim list. Well, that list has broadened in the last 4 years. So now you can use 529 plan money to pay for computers and related technology, your internet service, for example, or if you have a smart device with a particular app that you need for school, that can all be included as expenses that are qualified, and you can use 529 plan dollars for. So that's important too. The last thing I wanted to point out is that you can use your 529 plan as a budgeting resource for yourself. Let me just give you an example. So if you were attending grad school and you had a tuition reimbursement program with your employer, and your employer says, okay, we're gonna give you X amount for each course that you take, whatever their program consists of, you could literally take the money that they give you for tuition reimbursement, drop it into a 529 plan account, hope that the market does well, and then draw on it for future semesters and use it as like a rotating bank account that will earn interest tax-free for you to use in your future semesters. So you can use your 529 plan. You can contribute to it and draw on it at the same time while you're in school. So the money doesn't have to be pre-saved. A lot of people think, oh, I can't add any money to this account once you turn 18. No, there's no limitation on that. So you can put money in and take money right back out, literally at the same time. And you can use it as a budgeting tool. So say I open a 529 plan account because I'm about to begin graduate school in the fall. And I decide I'm going to put $100 a month in there. Well, that's going to come up to $1,200 a year, and that will cover your books. Also, with a 529 plan, anyone can contribute to your account. So if you have financially supportive people around you who are able and want to help you pay for some of your college expenses, maybe when you tell your brother or your sister that you're returning to school to get your graduate degree, they might decide they want to help you in some small way. And anyone can put the money in your account. They can contribute to your account. And when you take it out for qualified expenses, it's tax-free. Or if you should have a windfall of some kind, maybe you hit that Powerball they got going on right now, or you have a small inheritance of some kind. You can drop that money into your 529 plan, have it grow a little bit, and then draw on it for your expenses.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. I think we're starting to run short on time, so I do want to ask a couple quick things of our panelists while I still have them. But that's great. Love the crowdfunding suggestion. Like try and get everybody to contribute towards your savings for college. Absolutely. And so definitely savings, earning interest is always going to be better than paying interest, right? That's very helpful. One last thing, I know we are running short on time, but I did want to just open it up. We've talked about so many good things. Thank y'all for making this super rich with all of your experiences and your recommendations about how to find funding. But I just wanted to open it up to anybody to share anything that maybe we hadn't talked about. Are there programs that you're aware of that happen to be fully funded at your universities, or think opportunities that maybe we didn't hit on? And this is open to anybody.
Well, Devin, I will jump in here to say that for those students who are interested in PhD programs, that to please consider Duke and our sister institutions. Duke has over 80 departments and programs. And if you are admitted, and again, these programs, yes, they are competitive, but you have been given information on even applying to graduate school from CFNC. That is some dynamic information on how to make a competitive application, so that, if you're admitted, my question to you will be, so now you're guaranteed 5 full years of funding, a livable stipend, and health insurance. So what does this mean, and what does, does this work for you in terms of cost of living? So I do want to put that out there for all of the PhD programs that we offer at Duke. And then there are some master's degree programs, like our Master of Arts in Teaching, that are a year program that do come with funding. And you also teach in the local Durham public school system. So just wanted to throw that out there to say, because I think it is important, because sometimes we talk about resources and they're so rich and there's so many that sometimes it may be, you may miss things if you're just searching on the internet. So now as I tell students, your N of one has expanded to all these great panelists who come from institutions that offer various things. So I wanted to make sure that I put that out there for Duke.
Wonderful. And I think we had a question in the chat about teach grants. And I know Rashawn had mentioned a little bit about some of that. Could you speak to that at all, Rashawn?
Yes, so the Teach Grant is a federal service loan. It's called a grant, but it's a loan. In exchange for working for 4 years after you graduate, and it's in a need area. So if you look online, they have some more details about what's considered a need area, low income schools, that kind of thing. So if you're going into teaching anyway, I do recommend it. It's for undergraduate and graduates. So it's a good option. If you're not quite certain, you may want to think about it because it is a commitment. But if you know you're going into teaching anyway, it is a good opportunity. And the funding amount, it varies. So it changes from year to year. But I would say that all that's online. If you look it up on studentaid.gov, it should be there.
Wonderful. Okay, and so thank you to all our panelists. We are running out of time for our lunch and learn. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap up. Tamika, will you help us wrap up a little bit here? All right, so you can go on to CFNC.org, find lots of resources that we've mentioned, including a scholarship search. Many of those are for undergrad, but there are some graduate opportunities as well. You can also follow us. We have tons of events like this and others about saving for college, planning for college, paying for college on cfnc.org/events. You can scan that little QR code. It'll take you straight there. We will be sending you all a follow-up email with a resource list and this recording. So hopefully you'll get lots of information to get you started to researching those different opportunities. And of course, we do have a newsletter, which is really awesome. We have several, actually. One thing I really like about that is that you get to know about upcoming events. And sometimes we have contests, little scholarships here and there, too. So that can be a good opportunity to find some extra funding, find some resources and events that are coming up to help you on the way. And of course, stay connected with us. We are on all social media platforms. I also encourage you to connect with our panelists, their schools, their financial aid offices, scholarship offices. If you're at all interested in attending, a lot of times they're sending out lots of great information on their social media as well.
Definitely check out our YouTube channel, Devin. I was going to say this. We have done a few other graduate panels. So if you are still in the research process, you're looking about even how to apply to graduate school, we have some webinars that are recorded already on our YouTube channel that we've done this year. So you are joining us on one of our second or third panels we've done about graduate school. So definitely go to our YouTube channel and check out our prior to webinars that we've done in relation to graduate school.
Awesome. Yes, excellent. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So thank you all. Thank you so much to our panelists. You all are a wealth of knowledge and experience, and we appreciate you so much taking your time and expertise to be with us. And thank you to our attendees. We really wish you the best of luck in your journey towards graduate school and hopefully that great career that lies at the end of that journey. So thank you all so much for being here. And like I said, we will follow up within the next week with more resources to help you on your way. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.